This is Boomer Time, a proactive podcast for baby boomers, about baby boomers, and for people taking care of baby boomers. If that sounds like you, then you're in the right place. I'm Nancy Kogar, an elder law attorney and aging advocate, and this podcast was made just for you. Remember, though, the things we discuss here are not intended to be legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is established by this podcast. Thank you for being here today. I'm Nancy Kogar, and as you know, this is Boomer Time. This podcast is all about issues as we age. And as you know, I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney here in Chattanooga and a partner here at Samples Jennings Clement Fields in Chattanooga. I just love being here. And I see a wide range of issues in my practice, whether it's related to long-term care planning needs, estate planning, or even issues after a loved one dies. There are a whole host of complex issues that come up in your later years. And all too often, people who come see me haven't taken any steps to plan for their later years. So I'm very glad that they've decided to do that. Of course, I take every estate planning opportunity very seriously as it requires a deep dive into each individual's circumstances, along with their family's circumstances, special needs, healthcare issues, their assets, and any other special circumstances. And also any potential issues that may come up. Believe it or not, most people still don't take these steps, and it's estimated more than half of us have no will or any other basic estate planning in place. If you've been listening for some time now, you know that this can really create some complex circumstances in the event of an unexpected health diagnosis or emergency, not to mention the exposure or lack of direction it creates for your assets. So, it's my hope that Boomer Time helps to make folks out there more aware of the importance of getting your personal affairs in order. And when I say personal, I mean those plans need to be made to reflect your personal circumstances. I am not a fan of cookie-cutter generic documents. They just won't cut it. Don't believe me? Well, go back and listen to my episode 7, Do-It-Yourself Wills Will Lead to Disasters, or episode 10, SOL Without a POA. You know, I want you to be prepared, and that's where I'm going with all this. These issues matter. So today we are going to be talking about an issue that's been called the invisible epidemic. And that's because most of us don't see it unless we're personally experiencing it. The invisible epidemic is alcohol abuse among seniors. Now, there are some really very real risks that deserve attention, and I hope to highlight those today. These include risks to the seniors abusing the alcohol. That includes risks to their own health, stability, ability to stay at home, as well as risks to your loved ones, family members that may have to respond in a circumstance where a crisis occurs as a result of that kind of alcohol abuse. And this can be financial risk, emotional most certainly, and really could tear up your entire life altogether. And risks to your estate. We're even going to talk about that because, quite frankly, if you are abusing alcohol, you are putting others out there at risk, which could turn into injuring them and resulting in litigation and exposure to your estate. This may not seem like a real issue because a lot of those folks out there are used to having an afternoon cocktail, right? In fact, I think about boomers and I think of the martini generation. James Bond, have that martini after work or even after lunchtime. I could never understand that. But this impacts a lot of people really seriously. And that's why I'm addressing that today. I hope to get your attention. And if it sounds like the circumstances that you may have with a loved one, maybe, just maybe, I can encourage you to ask for help and avoid having you or someone else get hurt or even killed. Okay? So just a few years ago, pre-COVID, so I suspect these numbers are higher now, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, which tracks accidents, released a report which showed that the number of individuals 65 years and older who die in fatal car accidents, over 40% of them involved alcohol. That's a big number. And in fact, just last year, the agency reported that alcohol consumption among seniors is on the rise. So if a senior is drinking and driving, they are 2 times more likely to be involved in a fatal crash. That means maybe they die and maybe they kill somebody else. So that doesn't include all the other prescription drugs that many older adults are on. So this is a real issue. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the real health dangers to you if you are one of those seniors using alcohol to excess. There are a lot of you out there, and I'm not pointing the finger, I just want to help. You are not alone. There are more than 2.7 million adults over age 65 that have admitted to binge drinking on occasion. So this can come with some serious health risks, and we'll discuss that when we come back. Welcome back to the show. I am really glad you're here today, and I hope you know this is designed to be a safe place where we can talk about these real and often tough issues involved with aging. So today, of course, we're talking about alcohol abuse among seniors. And as part of my research, I ran across a Forbes magazine article, and it recently published an article reporting the involvement of alcohol in vehicle accidents involving the elderly. And as I indicated before the break, it is on the rise, and it can create a huge liability to you, the senior, and your family, and even your estate. So I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But first, I want to talk about the very real health risks that alcohol abuse poses to folks over 50 and above. There are all kinds of factors involved, and that can lead to abuse of alcohol, and they include the following: loneliness and isolation, use of alcohol as a coping method for chronic pain. I wouldn't intuitively think of that, but that makes sense. Sometimes it can be emotional grief, the loss of a loved one or spouse. You're married 40, 50 years and you lose a spouse. That is tremendous grief. Heartache, even stress and money issues. Some of the things we're talking about, just they're significant financial issues. So this can result in people turning to alcohol. And as we opened the show, I shared that alcohol abuse among seniors is known as the invisible epidemic. And that's because so many older adults live alone, maybe at their home by themselves. And today, family and loved ones live further away and perhaps don't visit as much. And because of those circumstances, seniors may turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism. And here's the additional problem. Although we may not see it, this kind of alcohol abuse can have a serious detrimental effect on the health of older loved ones. We're not 20 anymore. You get to be over 50, and the National Institutes of Health, or NIH, lists a whole host of damage that alcohol can cause to your health. That includes an increase in incidence of cancer, liver damage, stomach damage, diabetes, strokes, high blood pressure, ulcers, and even memory loss and confusion. Interestingly enough, alcohol abuse can often be misdiagnosed as a cognitive disorder. That's not something I would initially think about either, but I think it's important to mention. So not only can alcohol on its own lead to foggy brain or confusion, but add onto the top of the list prescription drugs that might be present. That's really a cocktail for disaster. Not only is your health a risk, but even more so, one of the most traumatic incidents that leads to the serious decline in a senior's quality of life, and I don't need to tell you this, but I'm going to remind you, and can often lead to death within a short time thereafter, are falls. So, did you know that 60% of falls involving seniors involves alcohol. That shocked me. Didn't surprise me, but shocked me. Fall prevention is significant when it comes to preserving the quality of life and stability of seniors. Did you know 1 in 4 seniors age 65 and up will have a fall each year? And like I said earlier, 60% of those falls involve alcohol. Falls can cause serious injuries. They can lead to you not being able to return home. They can cause hip fractures, head injuries, other broken bones, and even death. This is a topic that we need to be comfortable about talking about. That's why I brought it up today. No doubt, it's a stressful world we live in today, and lots of folks are having trouble coping on their own, and some of them turn to alcohol. This includes seniors. In that recent poll that I mentioned earlier by the NIH, 1 in 4 seniors admitted to drinking heavily in the last 30 days, and 1 in 10 admitted to binge drinking. You hear that about college kids and so forth. That's not what we're talking about here. This involves people 65 and up. And this really hurts my heart. And that's part of the reason I bring it up today. We need to be checking in more with our seniors and older family members. There is a better way. There is help available. And there is also support from both the community at large and the faith community. I haven't shied away from telling you that I'm a believer in Christ. And as a Christian, I want to touch on some faith aspects before the end of the show, because I think that's important when it comes to this issue. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about another aspect, a legal aspect, which I think is critical to touch on. And that is how alcohol abuse can cause a risk to other people and your estate. So I've already touched on the danger of driving while drinking, not to mention the effect prescription drugs can have on your ability to drive. Have you ever looked at the pill bottles when you pick them up at the drugstore? It says, may cause drowsiness. It says, don't operate heavy machinery. A car is a heavy machine, all right? So an increasing number of accidents in this country involve older adults who test positive for alcohol. In a sample of more than 87,000 drivers involved in crashes between 2 moving vehicles, it was determined that more than 1/3 were drivers over 70 who also tested positive for substances, alcohol, prescriptions, so forth. That's in our 2023 report from the Journal of Traffic Injury Prevention. And just an aside, the insurance companies and personal injury attorneys, they look at this stuff, folks. Okay, so substance abuse is disproportionately increased by the probability of being at fault during a crash. And that's regardless of your driver's age. But, my focus is older adults, and I want to highlight these issues and prevent something from happening. So that's the reason we're doing this. And in Tennessee, Tennessee is one state that does not require any special licensing requirements for elderly drivers. There are 33 other states in our country that do, and that includes vision tests, road tests, and mandating a more frequent renewal period. So I think it's important to remember that driving is a privilege, and we need to be cognizant of the safety of others while we're out there on the roads. 2015, the state of Tennessee reported that seniors accounted for about 22% of all the fatal accidents. Nationally, it's much lower, 8 to 9%. And I know that number's from a while back, but it's a snapshot. It shows you kind of what I'm talking about. So here's the legal aspect of it, okay? Fact is, if you injure or kill someone, you are in fact exposing you and your estate, even if you die, to a personal injury or worse, wrongful death suit for someone seeking damages against you for what you did out there on the road. You add alcohol or prescription drugs to the mix, and that's just going to make things worse. You don't believe me? Do a simple Google search and just see how many personal injury lawyers are advertising for damages that can be available to individuals involved in accidents with older adults. I don't want this to happen to you, okay? All right. Well, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to talk about how you can protect yourself from some of that risk with better estate planning. And then we're going to offer some encouraging words that I think hopefully will be a help to you. Thanks for listening with me. Be right back. Welcome back to Boomer Time. This is your host, Nancy Kogar. And, it wouldn't be a show from a lawyer unless I was talking a little bit about liability, of course. And we were talking about that before the break. And I do want to touch on that just a wee bit more because this is very important. So, a couple of thoughts. Of course, when you're 20 versus 60, your body is not in the same condition. And I am not a medical doctor, but you can easily find that alcohol is not processed the same way in your body at that time, and of course you have different medications you may be on and so forth. So it's important to know, that your lifestyle changes, your body changes, and you've got to be aware of these things. And when it comes to liability, I thought maybe just an example might help. What am I really talking about? Well, let's take Bob, for instance. Okay, Bob is 96 years old and he's still driving. He does not have a will because he doesn't think he needs it because he's got a bank account with $500,000 in it and it's payable on death to his son, Bob Jr. Okay, so that says I don't need a will. All right, well, Bob, goes out on a little date and takes his new gal friend out, and they have some dinner and some wine and some more wine. And then he gets back in his car, and Bob hits somebody on his way home with his car. And this person is badly injured. And Bob's okay, which is good. But they see he's got alcohol in his system, so there's going to be a legal issue. And, that's what lawyers do. They spot out issues. And I can tell you from this standpoint that, there may be a lawsuit filed, a personal injury suit, seeking damages against Bob. And Bob's got assets. So even if there's not a judgment levied against him in the case, he's still got to spend money defending himself. So, that $500,000 there, that's sitting there, and it can get spent down pretty quickly. And also, if there's a judgment, that's what they're going to go after. Maybe Bob has a house, and they could levy a judgment against his house. Let's say Bob gets seriously injured, okay? Let's say Bob dies along with somebody else. Well, Bob's estate, he didn't have a will, right? There get claims filed in his estate. That $500K may get pulled in. I know we said it was POD, but let's say it's just sitting there with no beneficiary on it. Then that's definitely going to be a part of his estate. And claims will get filed. And it may get dwindled down to the point where there's nothing left for Bob Jr. Here's another issue. Maybe Bob Jr. gave Dad Bob the keys to his car so he could take his girlfriend out on a date. Well, Bob Jr. may be vicariously liable for giving his dad the keys. That means he may be involved in the lawsuit as a defendant. I could go on, but These are real issues, folks, and that's why I want to bring some of these things up. So, one way you can better protect yourself, of course, is to not do this, right? I mean, be responsible. And you can also lessen some of the risk with better estate planning. I'm not saying that you can necessarily insulate yourself from liability if you injure or even kill someone else, but more so I'm saying to allow for someone whom you trust to help you if you're seriously injured or something happens that you're in a similar circumstance and cannot care for yourself. So I started out by saying that less than half of us have any basic estate planning in place. And these are examples of why you need specific estate planning. We don't know what the future holds, and you need a plan before something happens. That just makes sense. You need people who you can trust, officially named in legally binding documents to care for you and make decisions if you're not able to do that. And you need to do it before you're not able to do it. Caregivers out there, as I mentioned, you can be liable too, especially if you know your parents shouldn't be driving or they're driving under the influence and you allow them to use your car or they have access to your keys. I've said it before. It's called vicarious liability. I don't want this for you, and that's why I'm sharing this with you today. If they won't give up the keys voluntarily, there are other steps you can take, and we're going to talk about that in an upcoming episode, so make sure to follow us on that. That is a real issue, but there is help available, okay? Okay, let's take a deep breath, right? So in the few minutes that we have left, I want to touch on more of the emotional and spiritual issue that may be involved when it comes to the abuse of alcohol. As I said earlier, the loss of a loved one, isolation, being forced to leave your home and move into a new place, all of that can act as triggers. Let's stand next to our hurting older adults and advocate for them. Check in with them more so that this doesn't become an option. If you need help, there is help available both in the secular area and in the faith community. This past week, I really enjoyed the recent Praise Breakfast here in Chattanooga that was hosted by the Scenic City Women's Network. It was their 30th year and celebrating godly women who have had the courage to stand and support other women who are hurting and encourage women to look for God for our support. I was there for that morning, and Demi Lee Tebow was the keynote speaker. She's a former Miss Universe, beautiful woman, and the wife of football star Tim Tebow. So, both of them are people of strong faith, and they've stood out for that. And she shared something at the breakfast that I wrote down, and I wanted to share with you as a way of maybe encouraging you to look for opportunities to intervene, help, and encourage individuals who are in these kind of circumstances. So Ms. Tebow, Demi Lee, who is from South Africa, and has a new book out. I think it's called A Crown That Lasts, and I'm looking forward to that. It's not out yet, I should say, but it will be out soon, and maybe I'll put a link on my website so that you can check it out, because I'm looking forward to reading it. But Demi encouraged us to focus each day on the things that will last. So easy to get hooked up into the petty things. Just really is. People, here's what I find. People want to know that you care. They won't remember how much money you had, what kind of car you have, how hard you work. They'll remember how you made them feel. And in that, this is what she said to look for 3 opportunities in each day. And I so agree with this. 1, be willing to protect each other's flanks. What do I mean by that? What did she mean by that? Like a military formation. All those shields were locked together, protecting each other. Be willing to have somebody's back. Be willing to protect those weak spots. Don't seek to attack them or expose them. Stand up for people. We need more people like that. 2, focus on what's going to last. This world is like a vapor, just quickly evaporating away. It's just like Isaiah the prophet shared in the Old Testament. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of God stands forever. And I hope if you don't already, that you would make some room for him in your life. It's made a difference in my life, and he's never let me down. 3, be willing to look for opportunities to be interrupted to show someone compassion. Wow. In closing, she shared what I want to share with you right now. This podcast is my way of being interrupted in my busy life to show you compassion. I understand what a tough season the older years can be for both older adults and their family. So I say to you what Demi asked in looking for opportunities to be interrupted and show compassion by saying, I know, and I'm speaking to you, I know you're having a hard time right now. And I know what you're going through is not easy. I'm here with you. That is the reason for this podcast. For that reason, we're in this together, okay? Boomer Time is and will continue to be a place of resources and help and encouragement. And hopefully a safe place where we can share in this journey together. How about that? And I just want to close with just a quick prayer that I just ask that you're blessed by this information, that you have the ability to just absorb it, and that it leads to some productive and wonderful conversations with your family members, and that it protects you in ways, wisdom always protects us. And then I just ask you to just think about these things. And that the Lord bless you in this week. And that you come back. Okay? Amen. And remember to check out my website, nancykogar.com, where you'll find more resources and information. I love resources. And then there's also a link to my firm website, Samples Jennings Clement Field. So if you want to check that out, there's more information on my wonderful partners there who offer different kind of services. And if you like this podcast, do me a favor and like it, and follow me on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and even Google. So better yet, share it with a friend. Help us to get more people on board. I want them to be better planning for their older years. So with that, I'm glad you listened today, and I'm going to keep on keeping on, as they say. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And I will see you next time. Okay? Bye-bye.